can you believe that last year, 9 years after the old Volvo XC60 was launched, they sold more of them in a year than ever before? It's weird, isn't it? It's not supposed to work like that. Usually you launch a car, a couple of years later they peak in terms of sales volumes, and by 9 years' time you've kind of forgotten about it and are all buying an Audi Q5 instead. But when it comes to replacing the XC60, that does mean Volvo has a bit of an issue, doesn't it? What does it do? Make the car better, certainly, but try not to change the formula too much. So this is the new Volvo XC60. Welcome inside it. From the outside, it doesn't look all that different to before, does it? It is. It's longer, it's lower, it's wider, and it's got elements of Volvo's new design language, but fundamentally it still feels reassuringly like an XC60, I think. Where it is different is under the skin, because this sits on Volvo's SPA, Scalable Product Architecture. That came into being with the XC90, then the S90, then the V90, and what it means is that all of the bits forward pretty much of me to the front of the car are the same, and then you just add as much height and as much length behind me, so you get cars of a different size. It works quite well. Inside then, because it is off this same architecture, it feels very different to the last XC60, which was a real sort of clunker in terms of some of the switchgear and stuff like that. And it feels much more sophisticated. It's got the same touchscreen system as the XC90. It's been improved yet further for functionality, so it's really quite good. It is still, Volvo says they've brought in the windows and it's a much more cocoonish experience, but actually, if you've sat in a Q5 or a Mercedes GLC, this still feels like a really airy, nice cabin, I think. Because it's a Volvo, there are no engines bigger than 2 litres and nothing of more than 4 cylinders, but there are various lead turbos, superchargers, compressed air, hybrid systems, petrol, diesel. This is a D5 diesel, which means it's 2 litre, 4-cylinder diesel, 2 turbochargers, and a little bit of compressed air as well, because diesels, well, all turbos suffer from a bit of turbo lag, and there are ways around doing it. You can get a tiny little turbo which spins up very quickly, or like the new Audi SQ7 and Bentley, you can put a 48 volt electrical system in there. This is quite clever. It's got a little 2 litre air tank, and when you come on the throttle, it just some of that air into the turbo, gets it spinning very quickly, and reduces the amount of turbo lag. Clever, eh? The engine is pretty quiet, actually quieter than in any of the 90 models. I'm still not sure it's quite as quiet as that in, say, a Mercedes GLC or an Audi Q5, but the response is pretty good. You can change through the drive modes to change the response. Personally, I would leave the suspension in soft and the steering lightish, but put the drivetrain in dynamic, because it just ups the response of the engine and gearbox. And we're not talking Porsche levels of dynamic here, we're talking Volvo levels of dynamic, which means it looks a little bit more awake than it did a minute ago. Now, like the 90 vehicles, this has got some autonomous stuff on it. Semi-autonomous, actually. You're always in charge. The car is never in charge. But it does have pilot assist, which is like active cruise control and lane keep assist coupled together. And the new stuff on this over cars that they've released recently is that the XC60 can control the steering slightly, or give you a nudge to which steering you want to go if the city braking is on, if the blind spot assist is on and something's come out from the outside and you go to pull out. It'll just give you a hint that you might not actually want to do that because you'll have an accident. Now, also like the XC90, the V90 and the S90, the suspension is the same as well. So it's got double wishbones at the front, an integral link at the back. You can get air suspension, this one has it. However, whereas Volvo says that the 90 series cars are meant to be relaxing to drive, the 60 series cars are meant to be inspiring to drive, like a range of shower gels or something like that. But is it nice? Yeah, you know what? It is pretty comfortable. This rides better, I think, than any car on the SV90 platform so far. It's got all of the suppleness of the S and V90, and yet the sort of body control of the XC90, and that's quite a hard thing to do in an SUV. I think they've done it pretty well. The steering is really smooth, you know, really nice 3 turns lock to lock. It feels like it's come from a company that is starting to get the best out of a platform. It's starting to understand what this architecture can do. And I think the XC60 is probably the best car off it so far. It's also that little bit more compact than an XC90, which does in the UK. It's not a problem in the US and places, but in the UK, crikey, when you park that in some multi-storey car parks, it can feel wide. This car does not, actually. It's a nice, it's only a 5-seater, but it is a nice shape. So, predictable, dependable, very XC60, But actually, you know what? If the last car was anything to go by, that is no bad thing.